I'm going to scoot over to Matt, and you have to look interested because I'm talking across you. Okay, so you got to stand there and look like you're really interested. Matt Stamos, solution architect at Quantum. Storage is by far our favorite, most exciting aspect of production workflow. Honestly, I know, it's storage. It's exciting.
But it's the water, right? It's the water of your workflow. You got to have it.
You've got to have it. We want to talk to you about challenges of data, bandwidth, and workflow management. All right, you ready for that?
Yeah, for sure.
First question. What is the economic impact on a production switching from HD to 4K? And I know there's a lot of people out there watching right now that are contemplating 4K, and now's your chance to convince them that's the right move to make.
Well, I mean, the reality is there's obvious increases in bandwidth requirements, capacity requirements, which puts an ever-increasing strain on your storage system. You know, with our solution, we have the ability to tier. So you can tier stuff automatically off to lower cost tiers of storage, say LTO tape, cloud, or we even have object storage, which potentially could be less expensive than primary storage. So again, it kind of goes back to what you were saying, depending on the workflow, depending on the customer's challenges, it could even play into the geography of the customer. They have the ability now to not necessarily simply increase their primary storage, but increase maybe their LTO tier, a tertiary disk tier, or a cloud tier, and offload, if you will, components of their workflow that don't need the high performance of primary disk.
So when folks that are watching are thinking about this, they can still take what's existing, they can take their infrastructure and add to it using perhaps a quantum device, still have the ability to work in 4K, but utilize that capital investment they've already made and not have to clean house and go 4K top to bottom.
Exactly, and we can actually do that in a single namespace. So it'll still look like that same volume on your desktop, but the files could actually be living on a different tier. So you're going to it's going to look and feel like that same storage that you've been used to using, but you're going to move things off to save costs and preserve bandwidth and preserve capacity.
Well, speaking of bandwidth, going beyond bandwidth, how are clients dealing with the tidal wave of data? I mean, this is a massive amount of data they're going to start bringing in. So how are they dealing with it?
You know, the reality is that our tiering can be triggered via an API. So in a lot of more advanced workflows, they're using media asset management tools. They're using policy-based movement of data. So stuff gets moved automatically. So you're not kind of like manually moving files off and on storage. It really is happening automatically within the workflow. And because it's triggered via an API, that could be based on something as simple as a date. So if something as files age, they can be moved to lower cost tiers of storage, or it could be triggered by a third party like an API from a media asset management tool.
Okay. Working with 4K uncompressed, and we're talking about massive amounts of data, so 4K uncompressed. When working with critical parts of the workflow, such as finishing, how do you cope with that? I mean, that's again, we're lingering around the same subject area, but finishing is it's where it's done. So,
well, we have a branded bundle we call the Pro 4K, Pro Solutions 4K. So it's designed to handle uncompressed 4K in a shared workflow environment.
Okay.
And so I think that's really an entry-level product, but we can scale that to many users. But again, you're prioritizing your workflow based on the content, right? So the finishing guy is going to have access to faster aggregated disk pools, if you will, versus the intern who might be looking at proxy media. Right. So you can really sort of delegate the bandwidth based on the roles in the workflow.
Scale it based on who's using it. Okay.
Exactly.
Until recently, finishing in 4K has taken a dedicated storage tier, or a DAS, to separate from the rest of the workflow. Is it possible not to have everything in the same place? And I think you did just touch on that.
Yeah.
But can you elaborate a little more about dedicated storage and moving it all to just one?
Totally. And I think, again, we have multiple ways to do it. So depending on the workflow environment, like a lot of traditional workflows, when they were doing finishing, they were out on an island. They were direct attached storage, and it was, sort of not, they were really copying and moving data just to move it between workflow stations. In our workflow solution, we can literally have a finishing guy hand it off to color, and the same people can work on the same files at the same time.
So it sounds like when you're talking to the client, the ROI on that is time.
Yep.
I mean, if you're looking at the capital cost to do this, the ROI is the time you're going to save from when they had to move all those files back and forth, and the people it took to do so. having it all localized and being able to have everybody on the same machine, that's kind of what everybody's looking at as a cost savings for them.
Well, and it'll look and feel like the same direct attached workflow, only you're in a shared environment. And I think that's, people are somewhat comfortable working in those types of environments. HD's reached a point where most high-end facilities are working in shared storage. I don't think people are going to want to go back to the days of working on islands and working on
shared storages. I take my LaCie or whatever hard drive, I hand it to you, and I share it with you and say, here's my footage.
That sneaker net?
Yeah, there you go. Speaking of drives, SSD.
Yep.
Everybody's talking SSD. Will we see it take over for traditional disk anytime soon? And will it be able to perform high enough to do so? Are we going to get the performance out of it that we can from traditional disk?
Well, I mean, it certainly can get the performance, but I think cost is going to be a big barrier for a while. So what we're seeing in one of our solutions is having hybrid disk.
Okay.
So you're going to have a mix of SSDs, you're going to have a mix of traditional HDDs in the same chassis, and the mix might be based on the customer's capacity and bandwidth requirements. But the cool part about our solution is that it's got what we call intelligent tiering, so that files that are being commonly used are automatically moved between the SSD and the HDD tiers. So you're sort of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting sort of the bandwidth improvements or bandwidth increase of an SDD, but you're still maintaining sort of reasonable capacity by including HDDs in that same hybrid, if you will, solution.
How long do you see till the industry is able to adopt that? I mean, you talk about doing it now, but as a standard, are we going to see the hybrid is going to be the next step, and then possibly SSD in the future, or? Well,
I mean, hybrid includes SSD, and we're seeing hybrid today in these workflows, especially image sequence workflows in particular have super high bandwidth requirements. And really in 4K, even the lightly compressed, like you were mentioning, the ProRes is an incredible bandwidth requirements. So I think that you're going to see hybrid solutions become more common, and that's definitely going to be the next stage before you see pure SSD tiers. Pure SSD tiers, I think, with people with large wallets are going to be happy to spend the money on, but
and we have no problem. That's
to be able to
if
balance.
That's what they want to do. We'll help them through that.
I think most folks are going to look at their budgets and want to balance sort of the performance requirements between SSD and traditional HDD.
Right.
Next question is having the storage fast enough and large enough to cope with 4K data is one thing, but how does it integrate with the production workflow? Is it just a dumb device? And again, you've talked about APIs, you've talked about file management, so just continue with the production workflow.
Yeah, I mean, it really could be, and I think for a lot of the creative folks, it probably should be. There should really just be an icon on their desktop so they can sort of get to work and put stuff in their timeline and be the creative people that they are. Now the complexity or the sophistication kind of comes in on the admin side. So that's where potentially if a media asset manager is in play, if there's delivery components in play that could leverage the intelligence of our solution, then I think you're going to see that happen. And we're seeing our biggest and brightest clients, if you will, leveraging that. So
I guess my question then is, are they leveraging, do they have somebody in place to manage the workflow from behind the scenes? One thing we see a lot is people will install and get these new technologies and not have a business process to actually work with them. They have this big shiny new toy and it works really great, but they haven't developed a process internally to teach the editors and everybody how to use that. And a lot of times there's a lot of stumbling and falling. So is it one of those things we have to go in and educate as well as sell? Do you have to go in and help the client develop a good business process to utilize the technology? Is the technology easy enough that you can have just one or two people behind the scenes and everybody that's going to sit down is going to get it pretty quick?
I think it's going to be the one or two people behind the scenes.
Okay.
So our intelligent tiering is automatic. You're not going to make a decision on each individual file. I'll give you an easy example of a policy tier. If a file has not been touched for 90 days, go to LTO tape. That's something that most people can wrap their head around and deploy into their workflow without a lot of elbow grease, if you will. And the average editor doesn't necessarily really care about something that's older than 90 days.
Right.
That was in the news.
We hope they're done by then.
In the news, 90 days is ancient history,
Sure.
and also true of sports. Now, in more episodic shows, that policy might be 120 days, or it might be 6 months.
Right, or you have separate folders, I would imagine, of media that's going to be shared from shot to shot.
Exactly.
Anything else from Quantum? Any big news? Come on.
I think
Here's your platform,
yeah,
here's
we
your
have
chance.
we have a really exciting new product announcement around kind of a rebranding of our line called Excelis.
Okay.
So what we've done is really taken the most commonly requested features from our customers and rolled it into our current product line and renamed it. New faceplates, sort of a new software release around that, so they're supporting software around that. And I think, one thing I wanted to just touch on in that is being able to mix topologies becomes an important component, and that's an important component of this Excelis release, so that I can now have NAS, IP clients, and SAN clients mixing OSs and mixing connection topologies in the same shared storage environment.
Okay.
So if I need low latency access, say for a finishing station, I can have them on a fiber channel. If I've got interns on proxies, I can put them on a NAS connection, and I can really mix my connection topologies to really make the workflow more efficient from a budgetary standpoint as well as a bandwidth and capacity standpoint. And so we've really rolled all those features into our new sort of selection of products branded Excelis.
Here's the $1 million question: shipping?
Shipping November 24th.
Okay. And where can people go to find out more information?
Keycodemedia.com or quantum.com.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. That was awesome.
It's a great place to start.
Good place to start, keycodemedia.com.
Nice.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.